So when we come to our actual diagram here, where we've plotted points, this particular graph shows an increase or a positive slope here, no slope here, again we have a positive, and then we have a negative slope. There has to be a reason why this slope is ascending, then doesn't do anything, it goes sideways for a while on a flat, then it rises again, and then drops off here in this kind of rapid drop-off. And that is explained by the correlation between the x and y axis. If you were charting perhaps daylight hours, maybe, if our x-axis was number of daylight hours, and then if the y-axis would be maybe centimeters, and the title of our was plant growth, there has to be a reason why this particular chart has this type of slope and activity. Perhaps the number of daylight hours started out, the plant was growing, and then maybe an eclipse of the sun happened. So for these hours, there wasn't any change in the data of the centimeters. The eclipse is over now, and the plant continues to grow, and then the negative downward spiral here might have been the nighttime hours occurred. So we could explain the changes if you think about the correlations. And that's precisely where most of the questions are asked, particularly on the science section of the ACT and the SAT. The science portion of an ACT or SAT test doesn't have a whole lot to do with science. It really has to do with how do you read a graph? How do you explain these changes within the graph itself? How do you understand the correlation between the x and the y values? However, they put in the labels for the titles of these graphs are usually more complicated or have something to do with science. Maybe particles per square unit, or maybe they're talking about chemicals or elements in their labels. But the actual question has to do with graph reading. So the explanation for why we can have a positive slope turn into a no slope, turn into a positive slope, and then go negative, that's what the questions are about. So the correlations do matter, and the understanding between the x and the y axis really is helpful to understand that. And the basic 4 positions of the slope of a line can be very telling too. Positive, negative, no slope, and over the cliff, undefined.